as Canadians, we need to look beyond our borders and push our businesses and enterprises certainly beyond Canada.
Welcome to Speaking of Business, conversations with Canadian innovators, entrepreneurs, and business leaders. I'm Goldy Hyder, President and CEO of the Business Council of Canada. My guest today is Bob Espey, President and CEO of Parkland Corporation. Now, if you're not familiar with Parkland, I am sure you've seen some of the thousands of service centers and convenience stores it operates across Canada and in 24 other countries under such names as On the Run, Chevron, and Ultramar. Now, as a company that is focused on energy distribution, Bob is thinking a lot about the transition to low-carbon fuels. After all, a big part of Parkland's business is selling gas, diesel, and propane. So what will the energy transition mean for Parkland? How will customers' needs change as more people adopt electrical vehicles? What will a service station even look like 20 years from now? I'm so glad Bob's here to walk us through it. Welcome to the podcast, Bob.
Goldy, it's great to be able to get together and have a chat.
Let's talk about the Parkland story itself. You know, it started out as a small operation in Red Deer. You now operate in 25 countries. It's a huge success story, and it's a huge Canadian success story. Just walk us through, how did you do that?
The Parkland team has done a great job delivering, and we were fortunate that there was an opportunity in the marketplace. We were starting to see the consolidation of convenience and fuel businesses as two things happened. One was as the major oil companies started to get out of that portion of the value chain, and the other was as independents were looking for succession opportunities. You know, we're looking to monetize their businesses. And we were fortunate to be publicly traded, so to have access to capital, and got into that opportunity very quickly. First, we expanded east into Ontario. Then we expanded into BC. We were able to pick up some pretty large assets that were carve-outs from major oil companies that included both convenience and fuel. We also then made a small investment in the U.S., and started to see the opportunity there, a very fragmented marketplace that in some ways Canada had consolidated at a quicker rate. There, the structure was different, more opportunities, and started to grow that business. And then had an opportunity to expand internationally. All through that, we were able to take advantage of something that we developed, which was our core competency around supplying businesses in markets that are in fact hard to supply to. And our focus on logistics and distribution through truck, rail, and ship, and add value to these businesses. So, you know, the key was we saw an opportunity. It started in Canada, but we were able to take the success we had in Canada and translate that into other jurisdictions.
Some have suggested that you're in a dying industry, selling gas and diesel and propane to people at thousands of service centers across the Western Hemisphere. But I know you don't see it that way, and I want you to tell our listeners, how do you see Parkland evolving through this transition?
Yeah, no, look, something that we think a lot about, we develop our strategy around. We're certainly keeping a keen eye on it. I would say, you know, one of the things that we do provide with today's current energy system is, you know, we're focused on providing consumers across the regions that we operate with cheap, reliable energy. And we can't forget that the current infrastructure, the current energy that's provided is critical to Canadians, Americans, and, you know, other folks that we service, to them maintaining their lifestyle, to driving economies, right? So first and foremost, the business that we do today is very important. It's still very much valued, and there is a critical need for it. Now, that being said, you know, we are cognizant that things are changing. And one of the benefits that Parkland has is we're in many jurisdictions across Canada, the U.S., down into the Caribbean, South America, Central America. And we can see that pace of change depending on the country we work in. It varies greatly. We have some markets like BC, which are starting to transition quickly, and others that, you know, really it's not on the agenda yet. So our approach is to go to where the demand's developing in these new and alternative energies and participate in that. And that can be everything from the way that we service our customers through our convenience channel to providing them with the the capability to charge, but also the ability to spend more time at our sites and enjoy the amenities there. It also, on the commercial side, where we're looking at diesel, is helping those customers look at alternatives and continue to service their customers in an efficient way.
I'm interested in how you kind of square the circle of what you just said, which is in some parts of the world, you are moving forward with the transition. And in the other parts, it sounded like it's not even started yet. How do you, as a company with a purpose, a clear purpose, not one that's geographically based, I assume, consistent across your business, how do you communicate what really is the issue of our time, which is this transition, that it isn't an on-off switch, that it is a journey and some are further ahead and some are further behind? How are you managing that?
The change is different in different areas. And where we are seeing the change in the regulatory environment supporting that change, we're leaning in. Where it isn't, we're continuing to provide our customers with alternatives, understanding that in some jurisdictions, when we go further south, particularly south of the U.S., there are countries that their balance sheets, they don't have the wealth that the U.S. and Canada has to put behind some of these programs. And they will transition slower. But at the same time, these countries do need energy. They do need cheap energy so that they continue to move their economies forward in a productive way.
Now, you did something really interesting that I wanted to talk about. That is, you drove an EV from Calgary to Vancouver. And I want to ask you what that experience was like.
Yeah, so we did that a little over a year ago now. It was an eye-opening experience. So, at Parkland, we have an EV that people can use, and I've used it quite a bit, and to really start to see what the experience is like. Just to put it into context here, if I drive, it's a Model 3, across that distance, which is about 1,000 kilometers, give or take. We stopped 5 times to buy energy and spent roughly 2.5 hours waiting for that energy to be delivered into the vehicle. When I drive my ICE vehicle, we do that trip and stop once for 3 or 4 minutes to buy energy, right? So it's really changing the way that we travel and think about buying energy as we're traveling. And what became apparent is the consumer experience is underserviced, right? So you hear things like range anxiety and time to charge anxiety, and there's an opportunity there that as we see more EVs come into the market, we can address.
As you mentioned, you made 5 stops, each between 15 to 30 minutes to recharge. Is that long charging time a problem, or is it an opportunity?
Yeah, no, we're looking at it as an opportunity, right? So I think on the one hand, if you talk to consumers in this area, their concerns are, can I charge my car and how long will it take, right? So the opportunity is to have more accessible charging, but also put it in locations where it's close to amenities. And as an organization, we're very fortunate because we have a lot of sites already that sell gasoline. They're on major routes. They have proven traffic patterns. We've got convenience stores and restaurants that are co-located. And that's what the consumer is looking for, is somewhere that they can charge their vehicle. They have a safe place where they can go sit inside and spend their 30 to 40 minutes while the vehicle is capturing some charge to enjoy a relaxing surrounding. So there's a big opportunity that we see developing. And, we're quite fortunate to be in BC, where we are seeing higher adoption than other parts of the country, where we can start to experiment and trial and see how the consumer interfaces with the charging and with our convenience sites.
One of the things you did, not just relying on your own wonderful team that I'm sure you have, is you put out an international competition to help design a service station of the future, if we want to call it that. And it was supposed to be for just EV charging. That's all the station was to offer, was EV charging. I want you to tell us about the winning design.
Through Electrical Autonomy Canada, sponsor a competition to design the charging station of the future. And it was a really interesting exercise because it involved architects from around the world who were rethinking the experience of buying energy, and in this case, charging, and what new amenities would look like. And the winning design was, really incorporated a mix of time where you can charge the vehicle with different amenities, whether that's food, areas to relax, areas for recreation for children to play. And, that really helped us start to think through, well, what could this experience potentially look like? And what are some of the aspects of that we can incorporate into our future sites as we roll those out?
You did an acquisition recently, perhaps on strategy with what you've just described, but I want you to take me through it. We are big customers of this organization, but you brought M&M. M&M meat shops. Connect the dots here. How does that fit into me getting my car charged?
I do need to correct you on that. It's M&M Food Markets. Ah. So we did buy the business, and the business, in the last few years has been completely repositioned from frozen meat to frozen meals that are restaurant quality. And the business does really serve a unique niche in the Canadian market where people do want prepared food that's restaurant quality, but they want to eat it and prepare it at home. And the brand is one of the most recognized brands in Canada. So there's sort of three areas where we see the opportunity of that business within Parkland. So first is the frozen food offer is something that we saw that got very popular during the pandemic. And having a good frozen food offer and frozen food brand within our sites, we believe is additive to our offer, and consumers are looking for that. The second thing is I talked about loyalty. M&M has over 2 million active loyalty participants, and Parkland has a loyalty plan called Journey. And we see the opportunity to combine those and create, a leading loyalty program in Canada. And the opportunity there to cross-sell product is immense. The third thing is the M&M team has incredible capability around food. And one of the opportunities in Canada, an underserviced area, is fresh food in convenience. We've seen that as a segment in the U.S. take off. And in Canada, that's an underserved segment. And the opportunity to take M&M and start to port it into a fresh offer that we can offer within our convenience stores, we think there's a great opportunity there. And again, it goes back to brand and brand recognition. We've done a lot of consumer work that suggests that the consumer would appreciate that and would look forward to dining at an M&M fresh type location.
Well, look, we'll come back to the business, and I want to come back to the business, particularly in an evolving world and how to make businesses in Canada competitive. We'll end with that, but I want to put the meat in the sandwich if I can by talking about you. I think what you've just said about your business is a little bit reflection of you. It's not, can't just peg you into a box somewhere. You're an engineer, you were in the military, I believe in the Navy, and then you went on to do an MBA. It's an interesting experience, diversified experience that you've had. How has that helped you be a leader today?
Look, I'm fortunate that I have done a number of things throughout my career. What that's helped do is build some good breadth in my experience set. If I look back to my early part of my career in the Navy, which was a great place to start, a great place to get some really good leadership experience at an early age, really got taught the value of leading through motivation. The great thing about the military, it's a bit of a petri dish where you can look at different leadership styles and try different things and really get good feedback. And I really value that.
So tell me more about that. What do you mean by that?
Well, so, as a trainee, particularly, you bounce around between different units. In this case, I was in the Navy, so between different ships, and you can experience different leadership styles like real time.
Whose style did you like?
Well, look, I'm big into transparency and being open and honest. Some people would say I overshare with the team, but it's all about building trust and motivating people to get to a better place, right? And, I saw that in spades. I saw really good leadership in the Canadian military, and I've been able to take that with me throughout my career. I did leave the Navy, and after, an 8-year stint, and went and did an MBA. I was intrigued by business, but knew nothing about it. I'd worked in the military and came from a family of teachers. So it was a great way to develop breadth and understand some of the principles of business. And then for about 10 years, became a consultant after that, and was really fortunate to spend some time in the UK, working in and around London, and was able to work with some big multinationals and really experience the UK is a really unique place because it really is and London in particular is a global city. And as Canadians, we don't necessarily see that. We tend to have lots of businesses that are focused domestically. And this really expanded my horizons and got me to understand the importance of, when people there talk about business, they talk about global business. They don't talk about their backyard. And again, that's something that I've been fortunate to experience in these organizations. And something that I took forward is, as Canadians, we need to look beyond our borders and push our businesses and enterprises certainly beyond Canada.
Now, as you know, many of our listeners are MBA students themselves. They're looking to go on to be leaders like you. One of the things that's going on now is obviously a lot of emphasis on team for all the right reasons, and you're certainly a big believer in that. But you've also acquired a lot of businesses, not just large businesses like M&M. You've acquired a lot of smaller businesses as well. What I hear from CEOs is the importance of culture. How is it that you're able to integrate these new businesses, large and small and everything in between, and get the culture right?
It's interesting because we're, I like to say we're a 50-year-old company, yet 80% of our employees joined us within the last 4 to 5 years. And that's been mostly through inorganic growth, so acquiring people. And on the one hand, that's a real advantage. You're bringing diverse perspectives, diverse cultures, diverse nationalities. The strength of that is incredible in terms of bringing the best to the business. The question is, how do you harness that? So there's some core things we've kept. First and foremost is we have a set of values that permeate the business. And look, these values are pretty much aligned with the types of businesses we buy. There's safety. Safety is big in our industry, respect, integrity, and community. And it's interesting. I'll talk a bit about community because we do business in hundreds, if not thousands of communities across our jurisdictions. And it's really important that our teams who are parts of those communities can connect locally. So that's core, right? Is that we still want the local connection to the customer in these markets. The other part is our behavior. So as the business grew, there's an entrepreneurial piece and look, every business that grows wants to maintain some degree of entrepreneurialism. But how do you codify that and how do you create a set of behaviors, right? And we came up with the team. It was great. Some of the early work we did with our team around bold behaviors. So we like to be bold as a business. We like ambitious goals. And around that, we developed 4 key behaviors. So one is build. So I like to build great teams. The second one is I own my mandate. And that's a key one. And it goes back to being entrepreneurial. And it's all about when I'm given a mandate, I own it and I deliver against it. The third one is lead. I talked about leadership in the beginning. I think good teams are all about leaders that bring people together. And I always say at Parkland, the success of the business is not due to one person. It's really when we harness the greater team that it's incredibly powerful and incredibly effective. So we really deliberately try and create a culture. You've probably heard the expression team of teams, where people can come together, work on problems, solve them, and move on. And that really starts with the leadership facilitating that. And then the final thing is delivering results. As we all know in business, hitting the numbers is a ticket to the game. We need to deliver for our shareholders and our other stakeholders. And ultimately, that's a key enabler for the success of the business. So those 4 principles are something that we talk a lot about. We recognize one another when we see those behaviors demonstrated. It's really a way to make sure that we understand the culture that we want to permeate, but also the behaviors that reinforce that culture.
Well, I hope the kids were listening. That's a lot of nuggets in there that I think would serve them well in life, not just as business leaders. You mentioned that, maybe as much as 80% of your staff are here within the last 5 years. Of course, within the last 5 years, we spent 2 of it in a COVID. I'm wondering how the pandemic affected your business.
I was just talking to someone this morning about that. And I think we all learned a lot through the pandemic. We learned a lot about the countries we live in, the medical systems that we have, our teams, and how we needed to rely on one another. So there were just a ton of learnings. We learned about the resilience of our businesses, planning a business or the, making sure that the business can withstand a true black swan event, right? So there were many learnings. So, when you kind of peel that apart, I do think, from a business perspective, we did learn and we did understand how do we stress test a business or make sure that our business is prepared for unplanned events. We, like every other business, does a risk assessment every year. And I tell you, a global pandemic was not on the risk matrix when we finished it just a couple months before. So the key thing is that you understand and make sure that you have resilience in the business. That's in your balance sheet, in your culture, and can react quickly when these things happen. So the key learning is just making sure that you design the business and the operating model so that it can withstand shocks and not take the business down.
Now, I want to take some of the things you said about your approach in business and see if we can apply it to Canada. That's one of the subjects we like to discuss on this podcast is how do we seize this moment here in Canada to do as you suggested, be entrepreneurial, be bold, be ambitious, to build, to own our mandate, if you will, to lead and to deliver results because the world's changing, it's changing fast. What advice would you have to our political leaders and to Canadians generally who may or may not think about this enough in terms of how Canada can take this moment and really set a path for growth?
I'm always very bullish on Canada as a country. I think we've got some incredible resources at our disposal, and that's everything from a legal framework that protects people's property rights, which, is something that I think we don't fully appreciate, to our diversity of our population, I think is a key strength, and harnessing that in a productive way is a key competitive factor that we have that many countries don't have, right? I would also say that we're fortunately endowed with incredible natural resources that, really provide a strong backbone to our economy and fund, a lot of the future. On top of that, we've got great education. We've got all the ingredients to be the most successful country in the world. The key thing is that we allow it to kind of happen. Let's not stand in its way. Let's provide an environment that encourages people to get together and innovate, provide them with the capital to do that, and not overplan it. I think a lot of organizations, whether they're business or public, a lot of this happens organically, and we need to allow the people of Canada to come together, to innovate, and encourage that with the right incentives.
All right, you didn't say it, and you should run for political life. But what you really mean is we may be overregulated.
Is
that what you're saying?
Like I always say, you go through and look, and it's like running a business, right? I always say you don't want our defensemen standing in front of the net, like our opponent's net, right? You do need defensemen in every organization to make sure that the offense stays in check, but you don't want them standing in front of them. And when that happens, and look, it does happen occasionally in every organization, you get people that are demotivated and they leave, right? So the key is to get that right and understand that every country has both, right? We've got entrepreneurs, we've got people that want to be out front and drive change, and other people that want to be part of that and want to protect those people to make sure they don't get into trouble. But at the same time, we don't want to prevent them from winning. And I think that's one of the risks that we run in Canada, is that we're trying to direct it too much, and that's not going to work. So,
are you suggesting that we don't maybe need to be deliberate and intentional in terms of what our economic policy is, or just kind of leave it to the markets? Or what are you saying there?
I think the policy has to reinforce an environment where people can create and move forward, right? So there is a lot of regulation that enables that, but at the same time, it can't be, so directive that it stifles it. So, to your point, we need the regulation to protect that, but not get in the way of it.
Yeah, enable it, as you said. So you're operating in a lot of other countries. How are we comparing? How are we competing? I know you said you're bullish on Canada, but where can we do better?
I am bullish on Canada, and I think we've got great people, great education, great skills. We're not an exporter, right? We're a consolidator of businesses. So we buy businesses that run very locally. So we're not moving product across borders. We're really just moving our capital into markets where we can get a good return on that. And we operate in many jurisdictions in the U.S. I would say in some ways they have the same challenges, right? Like I think it depends on the state. They've got state regulations. We have provincial regulations. It'd be nice to see some of that stuff loosen up so that there's less friction between various jurisdictions to do business. We do move a lot of product across borders. I would say as you get further south in some of the markets that we're in, in some of the emerging economies, this is where I think we're very fortunate, like I say, around protection of rights and property that we don't necessarily see in those markets. We do business there. We do it carefully. But, it does make you appreciate what we do have in Canada and the U.S. in terms of protections.
Let me ask, because you just triggered it in my mind here, that you do cross a lot of interprovincial boundaries. Does the issue of interprovincial trade barriers inside this country affect your business?
It does. It does create a lot of friction, particularly in the business we're in of moving energy. And a lot of it moves by truck or by rail. There are different taxes, now different carbon environments that we need to comply with. And that creates extra costs, costs that ultimately flow through to the consumer. I think as a country, if we could eliminate some of that, it would be better for our productivity.
One of the things we talk about these interprovincial trade barriers and, they're way up here for the average person. Bring it down to the customer. How does the fact that you have to manage that impact the customer in some way, shape, or form, or does it?
I'd say the consumer, it's kind of invisible, right? But, where they would see it is when you look, and I'll take Alberta and BC because they're close by here, the price per liter of product is very different, right? It's much more expensive. A liter of gasoline in Calgary, if you compare it to Vancouver, it's 50, 60 cents more a liter, right? And a lot of that's just regulations that are driving that. Well, for each of those regulations, you need systems and processes that manage them. We need to be remitting taxes in different jurisdictions. That creates a lot of overhead in the business that, quite frankly is, you have to ask, is that really adding value to the consumer?
Well, let's be clear. Where's that overhead being passed on to is my point. The customer is paying at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, ultimately it does, right? And it does come in the form of lower productivity, ultimately, which is one of the big metrics of a country, right?
So let's look forward. What kind of a Canada do you think we can be even a decade from now if we do some of the things that you've talked about?
Again, I do go back to the fundamentals in Canada are awesome. When I look at education, people, healthcare, where we are, we don't have any big threats, unlike some other countries where you're in a rough neighborhood. We're in a pretty gentle neighborhood, right? And then again, I'm very bullish on natural resources. I do think energy transition is going to drive a lot of demand for the types of natural resources that we have. And, it's just making sure that, in some ways we use that wealth thoughtfully for the future, that we do enable the economy and the country to continue to diversify and develop new ways of wealth that aren't as focused on our natural resources, right? They're very important, but we need to make sure that we have a thoughtful approach. And again, let the market do it. We have a lot of smart people and they'll figure it out.
I'm going to sneak in one more question because I think it is central to your business, but also to our country at this time when it comes to the demand on energy, the demand on food, the demand on critical minerals, the infrastructure. Do we have the infrastructure to move these products in the country, in the continent, and around the world?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we all know the answer to that is it's difficult, right? I think it depends on the commodity, but certainly in Canada, and look, this isn't just in Canada, it's in the US and other jurisdictions. It is hard to put infrastructure in place that spans across different provinces or different jurisdictions. So we need to make sure that backbone is in place so that we don't squander that wealth.
Bob, it's been great having you on. I want to wish you and the company and everybody the very best of 2023. I've been telling everybody, may it just be kind to us all. I think we all deserve a little kindness right now.
Yeah, look, great. And really appreciate the opportunity to chat, Goldy, and really appreciate the leadership that you provide and your organization.
Thank you, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Great. Thanks. Take care.
Bob Espey is president and CEO of Parkland Corporation. If you've been enjoying our conversations with innovators, leaders, and entrepreneurs, please give us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're not already a subscriber, why not sign up to receive our monthly episodes? Search for Speaking of Business wherever you get your podcast, or go to our website at thebusinesscouncil.ca. Yes, it's thebusinesscouncil.ca. Until next time, I'm Goldy Hyder. Thanks for joining us.